mission of the Stores and Stories events is to gather oral histories from people who have significant stories to tell about the history of Hillsborough and Orange County. Well, this afternoon we're going to continue our journey through Hillsborough, and we have the privilege of introducing you to Wesley Woods, who is, I guess, the longest running merchant on West King Street at this point in his life. He'll tell you about when he began in business and all the details, but I just want to welcome Wesley and thank him for being a part of this venture with us, walking down the streets of Old Hillsborough.
Well, thank you, Kay. I'm pleased and glad to do it for you. I don't know where you want me to begin. I don't know if you want me to begin from the time that I used to carry papers or when I started to work at Western Auto.
Well, let's start with a little bit of personal history about you. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I grew up on Occoneechee Street, about 3 streets down from the center of town. First house on the left, it was a 2-story house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, I had 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and one of them passed away when she was 49 years old with breast cancer. Mm. The other right near living. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you grew up with a lot of activity in your household.
Pretty much so, yeah.
And you got out at a pretty young age to start working. What was your first job?
Well, actually, I guess first ones was mowing some lawns around there in the neighborhood, but then I took over a paper route when I was about 8 years old. And carried papers around town and out west Hillsborough and up around Fairview and back around. And
about how many customers did you have?
Well, I started out with like 125, but when I gave it up to come to work at Western Auto, I had about 475.
It was time to give it up, don't you
think? It was.
So when did you come to work at Western Auto?
I came back in summer of 1952.
And where was it located at that time?
It's located downtown at where I now own.
The dual supply buildings.
Yes.
In the same building that
same building,
Western
yes.
Auto was. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Jones hired you.
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit about Mr. Jones, Clarence Jones.
Well, you couldn't have asked for a better person. He was almost like a second father to me. I know one time I was about 15 years old, and I started paying internal revenue taxes and income taxes when I was about 13. When I first started working for Mr. Jones, because he took it out. I was about 15 years old when somebody there, and this older gentleman walked in the store there, and I never will forget it. It was kind of a tall guy, had a white hair and mustache, and had wearing a white and blue striped suit, and said he wanted to speak to Mr. Wesley Woods, and I said, "Well, I'm him, sir." He threw the badge on me. He says, with the Internal Revenue Service. And he said, you owe, no, we'll forget it. He said, you owe $15.16 for back taxes. He said, how do you want to pay for it? You want to pay cash or do you want to go to jail? I didn't know what to expect. Well, it just so happened Mr. Jones was sitting back there at the desk, and he heard him talking, so he came up there and said, what's the problem? So I told him, and he said, well, I'll just go ahead and pay you for you, and pay him for you, and I'll you can pay me back later. So I got out of that pretty good, but came that weekend to get paid. I thought, well, I won't get a salary this week because it's going to take most of what he just paid the Internal Revenue Service. But he gave me my pay, and I said, well, what about that the money that you took out for the Internal Revenue Services? He said, oh, don't worry about it, forget it. Then another time, he after my wife and I were married, and we had my older son, Michael. He was about a 1.5 years old, and my wife wanted to go someplace. Don't recall exactly what it was. And so I asked Mr. Jones if he could come down and stay with, where I could look after him down there for an hour or two, and he said sure. Well, at that time we had a little small safe back there in the back that Mr. Jones didn't know the combination to the safe, nor did I. And we used to keep hunting and fishing license in there. Well, what would you know? Mike was back there playing around. He got around in front of that safe, turned the little knob on the safe, and locked it. So there we were, a safe that was locked and couldn't get to the fishing and hunting license. So Mr. Jones had to call a locksmith, and he came over there and had to drill the lock. and unlocked the safe. No, we'll forget it cost $35 for that. So I thought, oh my gosh, I need every bill I could get. So that weekend when it come time to pay, same thing. I asked him about paying for that, and he said, no, don't worry about it. So that was 2 times he pulled me out from 100. But like I said, he was like a father to me, and I bought the business from him in 1974. He did all but just about give it to me. So I never will forget the gentleman, and he's always been in my heart ever since.
I guess so. Fine man.
Yes, he was.
Well respected in the community.
That's true.
Well, let's see if you can help us by walking through another section of Hillsboro. I know you had a story about Remus's section across the street. What was that story you were telling about Mr. Chance and the theater over there?
Oh, that was, of course, by living just down the street, I could go to the movies most any time I wanted to. And but I always enjoyed slipping in. And whenever Mrs. Chance would have her head turned, I'd slip into the theater. It wouldn't be long, he'd come in and he'd tap me on the head and say, Wesley, says, come on out. So I'd follow him outside, and I'd stay out there for a few minutes, and as soon as she got her head turned again, I'd be back in there. Well, this went on for several times, and so finally one day, I was carrying papers at this time, and so one day he said, Wesley, I'm going to make a deal with you. He said, I am tired of running you out of this theater. He says, on Saturdays when you deliver your papers, if you'll put one of these little handbills in your paper letting people know what's going to be playing at the theater next week, he said, you can go in the theater anytime you want to, and at that time they had a little concession stand there to the right. He said, you can get you a box of popcorn and a soda. So I was all for that. So that's what I did up until I quit carrying the papers.
You were a businessman from the get-go.
Oh, yeah, you had to be.
Yeah. And Mr. Chance knew a deal when he saw one. Well, let's move across the street and go up just beyond the Colonial Inn to Teardrops. You remember the family that lived there in Teardrops when we were growing up?
I sure do. That was Mr. Richmond and Mrs. Richmond. Mr. Richmond used to have the Ford Motor Company, which we'll talk about a little later on. And Mrs. Richmond, of course, she was a school teacher. And they had 2 sons, Jim and Bruce. They went to school. They were in school the same Bruce was, and his brother, the older brother, Jim, was in school, but he was a few grades ahead of us. But Bruce was just a grade or 2 ahead of me. But yeah, I knew them real well.
Yeah, so it was a private residence from 1940 to 1975, I suppose, about that time.
That's right. That's when Tom Roberts bought it and converted it into a bed and breakfast. Yeah. And that's what it is now today.
Yeah. And then, as I said, the Colonial Inn is the next building coming toward town. And in the Colonial Inn, we have a lot of memories there, those of us that had a chance to go there. Now we know that it's in disrepair, and we are hopeful someday, some way, that inn will be restored to the beauty that it once was. And we hope to have a Sunday afternoon session just on the Colonial Inn sometime, having people talking about their memories of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, coming on back to Hillsboro, we're getting close now to Mayor Ben Johnson's house, right before you get to Dual Supply.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a beauty shop back there.
Well, what my understanding is, on the back side of that building, there was a beauty salon there. Of course, I didn't have any reason to go.
Well, I did. I remember Edith Sharp was a beautician back there.
I remember
for
that.
a good while.
Yeah, because her husband worked for the town. He was a police officer at one time.
Yeah. And then Kay Weinkauf's family lived in the little house that's now owned by Judith Hauser, the attorney.
That's right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then there is the alleyway or the parking area right before you get to Dual Supply. But something else altogether stood in that little area right there during the time frame that we're talking about today. Do you remember all the buildings that were there?
Oh, yes, yes. That was Gilmore's Garage. And also there was a little, like a lean-to or storage building between the garage and at that time the Western Auto. And in there that's where they housed the fire trucks. they had that 1937 Chevrolet fire truck. That was their first truck that the town had bought, or the volunteer fire department owned. Then in 1951 they bought another one. But then later on, they sold the 41 Chevrolet truck, fire truck, and they finally found it back here several years ago. Chandler Cates and Marion Clark found it up in Greensboro, and they brought it back and they restored it, and it's still here. And if someone wants to see it, Jim Cates has that fire truck, and you may have seen it in some of the parades. But then also, the police department was in there for a short period of time before they finally tore that building down and was making a parking lot out of it. And then when they did that, there was a vacant lot there whereby I bought that property from, well, actually I didn't buy it. I traded because I had bought a piece of property down on Margaret Lane that the town was interested in, but they didn't have the money at that time to buy it. So anyway, I traded that piece of property on Margaret Lane for the property that used to be where the fire department was at that time, and put a new building in there.
As a part of Dual Supply.
That's correct.
That's the two-story building that you
Right.
built
Mm-hmm.
and added on to Dual Supply. Okay.
Yeah, there was a story there on that.
Mm-hmm. The water department was also in that area too, where the police department was for a little while. Maybe the mayor's office too, I think.
Well, it was, but that was a couple of buildings down.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So as a part of Dual Supply, after you built the two-story building, then there's your main building, and that was a part of Forrest Brothers store at one time. Is that correct?
No, that was the building next to it. See, when I built that building, I had already bought the building which is in the middle there from Mr. Jones.
Right.
He bought that building back in 1936 or 7, somewhere along in there. And that used to be, before that, used to be a 5 and 10 cent store.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because my dad used to work there.
Is that right?
Right,
Do you
when he
remember the
was a
name
kid.
of it?
All I know is Mr. Cole. My understanding of Mr. Cole.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've got it down here.
Well, maybe we'll run across
Yeah.
that name as we go along.
Uh-huh.
So, all right, the main building then was once a dime store.
Right.
And Mr. Jones bought it.
That's correct.
And then it became eventually the Western Auto.
That's correct.
And to the left was, as you're looking at the building, to the left was Forrest Brothers store.
That's right. Mhm.
Okay.
And then the Forrest Brothers, they sold that building to Mr. Jones
Right.
at that time. And then, of course, later on in some years, Mr. Jones sold that building to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in behind that building is also a taxidermist back there.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Driver, he's been back there for several years now.
Okay.
Then the alley comes up next.
Yeah, but let's talk a minute about Forrest Brothers store. Do you remember going in there as a kid?
Oh, yeah, I used to deliver their paper. A couple of things I remember most about Forrest Brothers was Chunk Forrest, which it always tickled me when he was taking a order over the telephone. Every time the person asked for something, it was a pound of tomatoes, he'd say it's all rotten. A pound of bananas, it was all rotten. If he wanted a can of soup, it was all rotten. Everything he said was all rotten. It always tickled me because I thought, well, gosh, if it's all rotten, why didn't anybody want to buy it? And then later on, they used to deliver groceries around town on bicycles.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then later on, they bought a pickup truck, and Cathammer McAdams used to drive the pickup truck and deliver the groceries then.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one time there, when I was delivering papers, I had a big paper bag, and also had a big basket to put the papers in. Well, I had to park right in front of his store there, and went in and delivered the paper to Chunk. When I came back out, this young man came by my bicycle, and he reached over and grabbed it and flipped it over. And when he did, the papers shot out across the sidewalk there. And I told him, I said, "You gonna pick those papers up?" He said, "No, he wasn't either." I said, "Yes, you are too." Well, when he said he wasn't, I jumped on him. And I started whipping up on him out there. Well, Chunk come outside there, and he grabbed me and pulled me off and says, "What are you boys fighting about?" And I told him what happened. He says, told the other young fella, he said, "Son, I suggest you pick those papers up and put them back in that bag and put them back on his bicycle." So he did.
So Chunk was looking after you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Chunk and his brother Bob also worked in there too, didn't
That's
he?
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe Kenneth DeLon worked in there for a while. Do you remember him?
Yeah. I think he was.
Mm-hmm.
He worked as a meat cutter.
Yeah, and Charlie Vincent.
Yeah, he
also.
did too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun to go in there. I can still remember exactly what it looked like. Yeah, nice meat in the back.
Oh yeah, they did their own. You know,
Yeah.
people. They had a place out in the very back where they'd bring in live chickens, and they would slaughter the chickens back there in the back, and they'd singe them and all. Then they'd bring them up and put them in the meat counter up front, and they'd cut their own meat. And you know, they had a big chopping block back there, and they had sink and all that stuff. Which still the sinks are still there in the store. Of course, they sold that chopping block when they sold the grocery store.
Well, those are some good memories.
Oh yes.
And then there's that little alleyway, and then there's the building that my first memory of it was the mayor's office. I think Purple Crow Bookstore's in there now.
Yeah.
Do you remember it being anything besides the mayor's office?
Yeah. Well, the police department was in there,
Okay.
and then in the mayor's office. Then they had a beauty salon in there. Had a computer guy that worked on computers, and then the Purple Crow bookstore's in there now.
Yeah, Vicki Daniels was in
Vicky
there.
was in there for a while.
Interior design. Yeah.
Of course, she
Mhm.
moved around the corner there, which we'll get to that building later.
Yeah, and I remember men used to sit out on the sidewalk there at night outside when it was the mayor's office. They'd sit around in wooden chairs and lean back, and there'd be more laughing going on over there and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would go, and he'd make my mom and us kids sit in the car while the fellas all talked over there. I didn't think that was quite fair, but that's
No,
what happened.
That's true. Now, also, at that time, they only had 2 police officers in town. You had a
Right.
daytime police officer and a nighttime police officer. Tom Roberts was the nighttime police officer, and George Hunt was the daytime. We always called him Barney because he was a little skinny, short,
Yeah.
small, skinny guy, and we'd call him Barney. But I can recall being a kid, we didn't smoke, but we always managed to get some firecrackers. So one night there, we in the alley there, we took a cigarette and lit it and stuck the fuse of the firecrackers in the cigarette, and of course we went back down the alley and got in the car and came back around and pulled up the side and pulled in front of the police department. Went inside, was talking to Tom Roberts, which was night policeman, and of course the firecrackers would go off after the cigarette would burn down to where the fuse was, and that thing would sounded at night. Wouldn't even know there's much going on anyway, and of course echoed in that alley and all. And he'd come running out there. He'd have his flashlight in his hand, and we'd be right behind him, and he'd shine it down that alley there. And says, "Okay, boys, I know who you are. I know who you are." He says, "I'll get you. I know who you are." And we'd say, "Go get him, Tom. Go get him, Tom." And then after the firecrackers quit going off, he'd look. Then he would go back inside there and talk for a few minutes. Then we'd tell him we'd have to leave. But I often wondered if he didn't know what was going on. Also, we found out too that down on Margaret Lane, if you take a flashlight and you shine it into the electronic eye there, it would cut all the lights off in town, and we'd aggravate him with that. And I don't guess he ever knew. If he did, he never did say anything about it. But I guess it kind of gave him something to do at night because he's sitting there by himself,
And
But
I expect he knew exactly who was down that alley.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on over to the next building. I know the Menaces eventually, I guess, had all of that building there that David Ballard is in now. But what do you remember about that next building?
Well, mostly it's just Menace Grocery. Then on the second floor there used to be a barber up there, and Agatha Collins, which was black barber, and he'd only cut white folks' hair. I know he used to cut mine, and my dad's. We used to go in there and get him to cut it. And also, Gaither had a place around on Churton Street.
Yes.
Before he moved down to where Millions Groceries was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then Ballard, of course, they bought that building and moved their insurance agent into it.
Right. Yeah, Ballard was one of the longest running business. It's one of the longest running businesses on King Street too.
That's correct.
Of course, John Ballard started it. Now
Right.
David, his son,
Mm-hmm.
has operated for many years. He and Teresa.
Yes, that's right.
And then I believe there was an entrance going upstairs that would go over the corner building.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you remember what was upstairs? Linda Howerton told me recently that her mother was born in that building. So evidently there was a private residence up there many years ago. That's upstairs on the corner.
Yeah, I didn't know in the early days what was up there because I had no reason to go up there. I know later on in time there was some retail spaces that was in up there, and and then of course I know down on the ground level. There used to be a drugstore there at one time. I believe it was Hayes Drug. And then it was Mary Boggs, I understand, had a cloth shop there. And then there was a real estate agent there and insurance.
Elsie Smith.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And then Cardinal Bank went in. And then after that, before Cardinal Bank, there was a young lady that her husband fixed it up, and she was selling art supplies. Then she quit doing that. Then Cardinal Bank went in, and then when Cardinal Bank went out, you had a lady that's opened up a arts and crafts shop, and then next thing she went out. Then they got a studio in there now.
Art gallery.
Art gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that building's seen many different proprietors.
Yes, it has.
Okay, let's turn the corner there and go on down Churton Street on South Churton.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember in that first building?
It used to be the Pontiac place.
That's where the Blue Bayou is now?
Right. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. In fact, my dad worked there for a short period of time. Then News of Orange used to print the News of Orange paper there. I know the boy up the street from where I grew up. He was a printer, and he on Saturday mornings my brother and I would go down there and the papers would come off in a big old sheet, and we would go down there on Saturday mornings and fold the paper, and then we'd cut it, kind of square it up. Then, of course, that didn't last too long because they sold the paper, and the guy that bought the paper said he was going to put in a machine to do all that, so we lost our job there. Then later on, Mr. Scott, he went in. He was in the furniture business, and he would buy old wagon wheels, and he'd make tables out of wagon wheels and cut glass and put the glass on it, and also he'd make stools and anything he could get out of old wood. And then later on, the News of Orange County came back in again as just an office. And then the Blue Bayou went in after that. And then the back side of that building used to be a guy who sold antiques, and he used the back part of that building for storage. Bernholt.
Bernholtz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So after you pass the Blue Bayou, the next building is where the Saratoga's upstairs, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And downstairs yard shops. I think that was Brown Gordon Grocery Store, wasn't it?
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Let's see now. The Blue Bayou is the building next to that. That was part of the same building where the Pontiac was.
Hmm.
The next building I think you're talking about is the Brown Gordon building.
Okay.
Now that's where Saratoga Grill is.
That's
in
right.
that.
That's
Uh-huh.
right. Mhm.
and they got antique shops in there as
Mhm.
well.
Right. And I don't think anything was upstairs in the Saratoga. That was a storage room for years, I guess, for Brown Gordon Grocery Store.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on down to the next building, there's a fairly new building there, built in what, the 50s, 60s maybe?
Yeah, I think that used to be an alley.
It was an alley, and I understand there was several little businesses in there before the building where Panchuto's is.
Right. I was thinking about that, but I couldn't. Anything didn't come to mind, and I was aiming to ask Carl Remus to find out what it was in there. I know Ted Lauder had bought that building. He had gutted it, and then something happens there, and so he sold it to, I believe, the George Horton, which went in there and remodeled it. And then the county went in and rented spaces in there for some months, and then, of course, then this the restaurant Panchuto's, they went in there and remodeled it and opened up the restaurant on the ground level, and then their living spaces on the second floor.
That's right. That made a very nice living space up there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on beyond Panchuto's, Melissa's Jewelry is in that building, I believe, and didn't that used to be a barber shop?
No, that's on down the street a little bit farther. Now that used to be back when I was a kid. There used to be a fellow named Charlie Cole. He lived about 2 houses up from where I grew up, and he sold hot dogs.
Okay.
And then later on, Ernest Wilkins opened up a jewelry store.
I think we're talking about two different buildings there.
No, don't think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Because this Melissa does have her jewelry store there.
That's right.
But these things, no, you're probably right.
Yeah, because after Melissa's Jewelry comes what used to be the bus station.
Right, that's
And
right.
Buck Gordon ran a sundry shop there.
Right,
There's a yarn shop there today, I believe.
that's correct.
And the next building going down the street, where several things have been, I've forgotten the name of the current one that's in there, but there was a little antique shop in there. But that's where Ernest Wilkins was.
Right,
That next
that's
little
right.
building, the jeweler
that's
for
right.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that one up there that we was talking about. You know, he had that little hot dog stand.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a bookkeeping service was in there for
That's right.
several years.
The Sendek, I
Yeah,
guess. Mhm.
the Sendek.
Yeah.
And then Melissa's got her jewelry store in there
Right.
now. Mm-hmm.
And then coming on down the street was the sundry shop, which is now the yarn shop.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Then,
and it also used to be the bus station there.
right, it
in
did.
the pool room. I know my papers used to come in from Durham on the 3 o'clock bus, so
Mhm.
you know it worked out pretty good because I'd carry the papers in the afternoon and didn't have to get up early in the morning and take them. But yeah, that used to be a soda shop. They had the pool room in there, and then of course later on they had some other businesses in there after it was cut up and made offices and some offices in there. But now, yeah, the yarn shop is in there, and there's still some offices in the back.
Yeah, and the next little building that was Ernest Wilkins' jewelry store.
Right.
It was a jewelry store for a very long time.
It was.
Yeah, and then several other small shops came in.
Mhm.
But on down from that is where the wine shop is now.
Right. That used to be post office.
That's right. Who was the mistress or postmaster that you remember there? Back in,
You know, I'll
40s
have to
and
tell you,
50s.
Kay, I have no idea.
how about Miss Maud Brown? Wasn't that who it was? We'll talk to G about that and see if
Maud
he
Brown.
remembers.
I thought
Yeah.
she had the clothing store up on Church Street.
No, that's a different Brown. That's Miss Hattie.
That's
Yeah,
right. That
yeah.
was Miss Hattie.
Miss
It
Maud
could have been.
Was the
Yeah.
postmistress, and
Of course, I had no reason to, the only time I'd go down there to get the mail out of the post office box occasionally.
Yeah.
But I didn't know who the lady was. It was the postmaster or mistress.
And going on down the street on King, south on King, was Everett Kennedy has a real estate office in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Vicki McDaniels is in there now. I can't remember before Everett Kennedy came in what that little building was used for. Do you remember?
There used to be the barber shop. That's where the barber shop was.
That's barber shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a little story there. I I had bought, well, I had Sonny Buck Riggs. I don't know if anybody really knew who he was, but anyway, he had a 31 Ford sedan. And so I asked him one day, he was at the store, I said, Sonny Buck, I said, how about sending me that A model? He said, well, I'll tell you what you do, Wesley. Says, I owe Mr. Jones $35. Says, if you'll pay him, you can have it. Just come out to my house and get it. I said, I'll do that. Well, anyway, I went out there and got it. But anyway, I had pulled down in front of the barber shop and went inside to get a haircut. Well, got through and I went outside and I had a ticket on my windshield. I looked at it. So I went up to the police department and I said, Mr. Hunt, why did you give me a ticket? He said, because you was parking in the wrong place. He said, I went up down the street to see who the car belonged to, but I couldn't find nobody who knew who it was. I said, well, I was right there in the barber shop. I said, if you just come in the barber shop there, you knew where I was. He said, well, where's your ticket? I said, it's right here. He said, I handed it to him. He said, okay. So he tore it up and said, just don't do it no more.
That's the kind of tickets we like to get. Then there's the big business on the corner, the big building there. My memory, it was J.L. Brown's store for a long time. And they sold shoes and what else in there?
Oh, gosh. They sold men's suits, hats, shoes.
Coveralls.
Blue jeans, Wrangler blue jeans. I know when I was carrying papers, I'd go down there once a year. I'd buy 6 pair of jeans before school started. I'd buy me 2 pairs that was fit, and I bought 2 pairs that was just a little bit large, and I bought 2 extra pairs, which was even larger than that. So
the newspaper route must have been paying pretty good.
It was paying pretty good. Of course, back then, the blue jeans wasn't that much, I don't guess. It was probably about $8 a pair. And, of course, having some younger brothers, I knew that when I outgrew them, they'd be handed down to them.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, they and then in the back, they opened up a grocery store back then. They had a little meat market and so forth. But mostly dry goods is what they had. And they sold some feed as well.
Yeah.
They had a storage on Margaret Lane there,
which
we'll probably get to a little later on.
Yeah, we do need to go on down on Margaret Lane. The Cy Hoag's building now was a part of the J.L. Brown store.
It was.
Originally.
You're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a back part. That was
right.
a part that was added to it when they put in the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, on my understanding, it was on part of the land that belonged to the parking lot right behind it. So therefore, when he acquired that part of the building, I know he had to buy. My understanding, he had to buy the back part in order to separate it, the two.
And then in that parking area, there was, I believe, Johnny Faust had a little ice house there one time.
Well, actually, he did, but before that, they used to make ice there. They had an ice plant.
That was Mr. H.H. Brown.
Right, and John Faust worked there.
Okay.
And he sold ice there, and they made the ice there, and they had when they'd make the ice, it would come down to chute, and when they pulled it out of the drums, and they had a building there that the ice was insulated where they could keep the ice in there. And during the summertime, what was so nice, they'd put watermelons in there. And, of course, if you catch it just right, if you didn't want to buy one, if you catch it when they cut one up, you could get a slice of watermelon. But later on, they did away with the ice plant. They cut the bank down to make it street level. So John Faust, they had brought him a little portable type ice building, and he'd had the ice brought in, from my understanding, from Durham.
Mm-hmm.
And he had still sold ice down there, but he didn't. They didn't make it there.
Yeah, after people quit having ice boxes in their home, there wasn't as much need for it. Well, I guess we better move on across the street to where the new library is. That was Southern States, originally called Farmers Exchange.
Yeah.
But even before that, it was the Nash Collett Girls School.
That's correct, yeah.
But coming down back toward King Street, there's a little white house there where Loco Pops was. I believe Mary Davis still owns that house.
Yeah.
Don't know what businesses are in there now. Chamber of Commerce was in there at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then next to it was a plumbing company. Still is, I guess. Hillsborough Plumbing Company.
Well, they own the building. My understanding is that, of course, they built a building out there on 57.
That's right.
My understanding has been several different people was wanting to buy the property. So far as I know, Gary Riggs still owns the property. He hasn't sold it yet.
Yeah. But if you went on back beyond that storage building that they have there, down in there somewhere was a blacksmith.
It
You
was.
remember him?
I remember that blacksmith shop being there. All I can remember was going down there and seeing a big old tall black guy there with an apron and all and had his forge going.
Was his name Jack Valines?
I don't know. I never did know his name. I thought he was a Whitted.
Okay. There's a Clyde Whitted that ran one too, but
Yeah.
I think it was in a different location.
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
It could have been Vincent.
Yeah.
I never did know his name.
let's come back to the corner of King and Wake, where Matthew Strum had a service station. That building's I don't mean King and Wake, King and Margaret Lane.
Right.
And I've still got it wrong. Churton and Margaret Lane.
Right. Okay, that's right.
Yeah, there's a building being remodeled there on the corner, and that
Right.
used to be an Esso station that Matthew Strum ran.
Right.
Maybe somebody had something there before he did. I don't know. I remember there was a little hot dog stand as a part of it at one time. It was a little separate
Right.
building next to what was the Ford Company when Calvin Ray operated it.
That's correct.
So that the Ford Company became the fire department, right?
Well, getting back up to the corner there, Matthew Strum had his service station there, and he did have a hot dog. He sold hot dogs right there, and Pepsi Colas right there, had a little space. But after he got through doing that, they came in there with the rescue squad.
That's right.
And then after the rescue squad, they went out. They moved out of side of town, or not outside of town. They moved down the street there. There was Jeannie's Grill that opened up a grill there for a short period of time. And then right now, Robin Taylor Hall owns that building.
On the corner.
Right, which she's in the process of working it over and trying to
Right.
bring it back to what it used to look like, from my understanding, from back years ago.
Okay, that'll be nice. All right, I guess we better move along. Going on down south on Churton, there's a parking lot, little parking area right beside where the emergency station is, and then there's what used to be the Ford Company that now houses a number of businesses, including Brick Alley Books.
Well, now back to the Ford Motor Company building. Now, when after Calvin built that, and he moved out of town, Major Business Forums went in there.
That's right, they did.
They went in there. They was in there for several years till they moved out on 50, on out north of town on 86. Then the fire department went in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right. You're exactly right. All right. At the Ford Company that originally was owned by Mr. Richmond,
That's right.
it's the one that houses Brick Alley Books and Home Helpers and some other businesses now.
Right. Then
And go ahead.
they had before that the county had some space in there. They was renting out to some of the local government.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of different things have been
Yeah.
in that one. Yeah. And the next little building is ENT Surveyors. Steve Uhas's surveying. And then where Weaver Street is now, there were a number of things.
Now, where Hoss's was, it used to be a Mr. Bivens.
That's right.
Had a tool sharpening
Exactly right.
business in there.
Exactly right.
Then you went to ENT. And
ENT, right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next area housed John Williams Architect, and the post office was there at one time, where Weaver Street is.
Right. And the laundromat.
The laundromat was there one time.
Post office was there.
Yeah. So that was the last building on the street, I believe.
Right.
One
It was
last I
torn
can
down.
remember.
Yeah, it was torn down when they built Gateway Center.
Right. And to step over the river, just a step, there's Riverside Cafe that Dorothy and Leon Lee operate.
Yeah.
And that concludes that side of the street, but they were
Well, now before that, Wendy Bill Ray
That's right, he
had
did.
a service station there, and he sold barbecue.
Yeah.
And from what I Faribault had a barbecue, sold barbecue and so forth, and evidently he must have sold it to Mr. Wendy Bill, and he sold it at his store. Also, there was at one time they had a trailer over there that they used for the post office for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's while they was building the one down there on King Street.
Right.
Yeah. But the funny thing about Winnie Bill's store now, Dwight, Mr. Walters was
Irvin Walters.
He was in charge of the Department of Correction over there in the
prison
department, but he was in charge of roads and so forth. And Wendy Bill was always kidding Mr. Walters about bringing him a big rock and putting it out in front of his store. And so at that time, my dad was working under him, and so they were working on the road somewhere, and he called my dad over and said, "I want you to go bring your truck over here." And they loaded this big old huge rock on the back of his truck, and he carried it over and dumped it in front of Wendy Bill's business. Well, when he came back the next morning, he saw this big old rock out there in front, and he just they said he just really had a fit, but it was all in fun.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of thing went on then.
Yeah.
Well, let's come back into town on Churton, where the new courthouse stands. What do you remember was in that place?
That used to be the school used to have the school board used to have their garage there, and school garage, and also like the Board of Education, the superintendent of the school of Orange County Schools used to have a office in that building there.
That's when we had a very small school system.
Right, and then of course they tore all that down, and back in 1952, I believe it was, they built that new courthouse.
Right.
Also, they got a time capsule in there in the corner. I don't know if anybody knows about it or not, but it's right there where it says 1952.
Right.
You might have went to that
Dedication. I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I believe what are they supposed to take that out in 100 years? Is that what it is? 150 years?
I don't think I need to worry about it.
No, but anyway, they put a lot of things in there that was related to that year. I know at that time used to have that there was a outdoor drama that was
The Road to Orange.
Right, Road to Orange, and they put a copy of that book in there.
Program.
Yeah. Which it'll be, I'm sure whenever they take it out, it'll be in there. But yeah, that was written by Paul Green, and I know I was in that play. They had 3 or 4 nights up there on the football field behind the
Whitted
building, and then they went to Chapel Hill over at Keenan Stadium and headed over there for.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they had 3 or 4 nights over there, and the Playmakers is actually the one that put it on more or less, and they had like a school bus type thing, and you was dressed in the clothes of that time, and I played one part as Hinton James, the first student at Carolina, and Claiborne Wilkerson and Mitch Lloyd's dad was on it one time. They came by on a horse and wagon and stopped and picked me up to carry me to Carolina. But it's
that's quite a memory.
It was. It was
big deal.
Yeah, and I played a part one time as an Indian, where they'd come around to small towns, and if this guy would bet that his Indian could outrun anybody in that town, and of course I was the Indian, and I remember we practiced up there in the old gymnasium. You know where that was?
Yes, I do.
And Joe Wren's brother, he was the one that was supposed to outrun me. Of course, I always was outrunning him, and they told me, you got to slow down because he's supposed to outrun you. But those are some of the things I remember, plus others. And
And we know, too, behind the new courthouse was a black community that Sherry Freeland's going to tell us about when she tells us
Right.
her stories.
Uh-huh.
But another place I would wish you would mention is Walker Milling Company,
Yes.
which was across from the old courthouse on Court Street.
That's correct. Yeah. That's where, in fact, your grandfather was a miller over there.
He was, Atlas Williams. He was
Yep.
a miller.
And
But the people that owned it were
Walkers.
Walkers.
Right. And one of the Walkers is still living, Donald Walker.
He's a son of the original owners.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The original owners were Charlie and Henry
Uh-huh.
and Houston. I think all three
All
of
three of
them,
them. Yeah.
were owners of it.
Yeah, I remember they'd come in there with the corn and whatever, wheat and whatever, and they'd grind it over there and sold flour and whatever. But what I remember most about that, other than that, is where they shuck the corn, I guess, or whatever. They would blow the corn shucks and whatever in the backside between two parts of the building. And of course, the water and everything would come off the building too and fall down there. But you could go down there and take a pitchfork or something and just pull back one clod of that, and that thing would be loaded down with black fishing worms.
Whoa.
And you could take those and go down the river and have your best time fishing.
You knew all the inside stories. I remember going up on that elevator in there with my grandfather. It was a wooden platform elevator that you had to pull up by a rope.
Oh, yeah.
It was a scary proposition.
I bet it was. I never did go inside because I was, so young and I had no reason to go inside, but just to go by and...
Well, it was a town gathering place, especially when the farmers came in with their grain to be ground.
Well, that's true because, on Saturdays, your farmers would come into town and back then, you didn't close till 9 o'clock on Saturday nights. And they would come in and spend the biggest part of the day and bring some of their products in and trade it for whatever they needed, So a lot of times these grocery stores probably got their eggs and all that stuff, corn and whatever.
A lot of bartering went
Yeah,
on
oh,
in
Lord,
those
yeah.
days. Yeah. Well, the one other building over there is where the Agriculture Extension Agency was, on the corner. I believe that's where Don Matheson had his office.
It was, yeah.
And now it has a variety of county offices in it.
That's
Board
right.
of Elections. I think it may be moving too. But our town is changing. But
Oh, yeah.
you've helped create a good picture of what it was like from 1940 to 1975. And you probably can do that as well as anybody I know. And I thank you for doing it today.
Well, I enjoy it, and I enjoy it. I like history, and I like old stuff. My wife likes old stuff too, by just looking around and seeing me. But yeah, we both enjoy that, and enjoy the quality of life here. And back then, when I was a kid, it was nothing for me. I never even thought about anybody grabbing you and hurting you in any kind of way. And I'd go to the movies, like I said, at night downtown by myself and walk home at 9 o'clock. And most time, you knew somebody that was going back towards West Hillsboro, and you'd walk with them till you got to where you need to cut off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
You were about 7 or 8 years old.
I
Felt
enjoyed it.
perfectly safe.
I did.
Yeah.
And I recall before my grandfather passed away, I must have been he passed away when I was 7 years old, so I must have been either 5 or 6 years old. But I used to go downtown, walk down the street with him, because he lived on Occoneechee Street on the first floor, and we lived it was a 2-story, so we lived on the second floor. But we used to go down there. It used to be Scott's Furniture, I believe.
Where Remus Smith's furniture
Right.
eventually was.
And they had a bench sitting out in front of there, and my grandfather and Mr. Nix, which he always brought a piece of peppermint stick, and I'd sit there and lick peppermint stick while they sat there and talked and whittled. But I always thought it was Santa Claus because his last name was Nix. He had white hair and had white beard, and I thought, well, that's Santa Claus, and he just disguised.
Was he the pastor at the Methodist Church for a while?
He might have been.
S.F. Nix,
Yeah.
I believe that must have been
Yeah.
who it was.
But I remember that as if it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you stayed around Hillsboro, and I'm glad you've brought Alice here. You're both a real tribute to our community. Thank you for being
Yeah.
a part of us.
Well, she's part of my wife Alice. She's from Carborough, and all her relatives are from over there. The Lloyds, the McKnights, and the Andrews. So she's a old time Carborough and Orange County person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deep roots.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome.
Many volunteers prepared the Stores and Stories DVD series. Every effort is made to record information as accurately as possible. Volunteers do not profess to have professional skills in filming or editing. If you have professional skills and would like to join the production team, please let the museum director know of your interest.
Start again.
This DVD has been produced as a fundraiser for the Historical Foundation of Hillsborough and Orange County. The HFHOC requests that these DVDs not be copied by others. Additional copies may be purchased at the Orange County Museum at 201 North Churton Street in Hillsborough